Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The Yankees are swept by the Tampa Bay Rays at Tropicana Field. They have now lost 5 in a row. They started out 7-1 and are 1-6 since, having lost the last game to the Marlins, won the first game against the A's, lost that series 2 out of 3, and then get swept against Tampa Bay. So first AL East series 0-3. And just two below standard series in a row where you lose 2 of 3 to the A's at home. That wasn't good. And now it's even worse getting swept against Tampa. Not that losing 2 out of 3 would have been great, but everything being completely equal, you could understand where that may happen. Tampa Bay's a very scrappy team, and that was on full display in this series. And look, Drew Rasmussen has given the Yankees fits. He's a good pitcher. Now, the Yankees did have Fried and Schlittler on the mound, but you could understand that. But the Yankees are now 0-6 in run games, and the one non-one run loss was a 2-run game, which they lost in game 1. You have an extra innings lost in the second game where Jose Caballero had some potential heroics against his former team that didn't come to fruition for a Yankee victory. And game 3, a comeback falls short. So definite concerns, mainly with the lineup. Just a ton of dead weight, mostly at the bottom. But really, we're only talking about a few players that are really dangerous, in this Yankee offense. Um, and the pitching, while it didn't give up that many runs against Tampa, in terms of shutdown innings, I believe the stat was only successful 1 out of 6 innings where the Yankees scored a run only one time. The Yankees then not give up a run the following inning. You just can't have that. And the speed of Tampa Bay killed the Yankees, namely Chandler Simpson, as well as Taylor Walls, and that really can happen. Taylor Walls, known as a very good defensive player, has really been one of the worst offensive players in Major League Baseball in the last few years. And they, when the Rays needed to, lay a bunt down successfully, they did it. When they needed to get a runner on third less than 2 outs, they got it done. And the Yankees have had major struggles with runners in scoring position in this losing streak. I think somewhere in the 4 for 33 range in the last 5 games, runners in scoring position, and a couple of those hits come to mind, whereas the Caballero hits in game 2. You had a Cody Bellinger one in game 3. There just isn't many to speak of. And the ones that, because there was so few of them, you kind of remember the ones that were. But let's discuss best player and worst player of the series. And a lot of candidates on both sides. And I ended up kind of not going where I thought I would, and kind of thinking about it and looking at it. And the best player of the series ends up going to Ben Rice, who overall goes 4 for 8 with a home run, almost 2, a couple of doubles, a couple of walks. And Max Fried falls just short. It's been that way where Fried's come close to winning, best player of the series. And, really, 8 innings was great. But, 3 runs, it's the way that it happened, where you needed him to kind of just lock down and he didn't. But there weren't that many candidates as far as ones that did well. Of course, that makes sense in a series that you get swept. But Ben Rice, who has struck out a lot, and there have been issues as far as ABS challenging is concerned, but he has definitely been very consistent, basically from the start of the season. Has a batting average up to 356, an OPS of 1256, and on base percentage of 500. Just ridiculous stats for Ben Rice, which really makes it tough for Paul Goldschmidt to get much opportunity, which is a continued problem as far as the utilization of the team by Aaron Boone and company, where, I wish that Goldschmidt would get more of a chance. He just really doesn't. His role is very different on this team than it was last year. And he was overused last year, to be fair. I was a big proponent of him not playing as much, but now it seems like it's kind of gone the other way. But yeah, I think those are the two clear kind of best players of the series. But, we'll go with Ben Rice on this one. And as far as the worst player of the series, now that one has a lot more candidates, but I'm going to go with Randall Grichuk, who goes 0 for 7 and, made out in some pretty big spots along the way in games 1 and 2 specifically. had a couple of starts. He is 0 for 12 as a Yankee. He did get robbed in his last at bat, to be fair, on a play up the middle. But Randall Grichuk, you know, I hope that he's someone that doesn't get too long of a leash with the Yankees, as I think that he um, really doesn't give you a whole lot. If he's not going to be doing much against lefties, then I'm not really sure why he would be on this team. And I hope that Jason Dominguez gets that opportunity. And in the way of maybe a guy like Trent Grisham, who he came, I could have given it to Trent Grisham. For me, it was more Randall Grichuk is just kind of a better talking point. Grisham, for unfortunately, he's going to be your guy for now, starting in center field against righties, leading off. But Trent Grisham, he didn't have a hit this series either. The only thing he's done well is he's walked, hasn't made any major gaffes defensively in center field. Um, but, Luis Heel did not do very well in his opening outing of the season, the major league level. Gives up four innings, 3 runs for Heel. Brent Hedrick was another candidate where he wasn't necessarily hit hard, but he gave up runs in games 1 and 3. So Hedrick was a possibility. There were, the usual suspects have struggled as well. But Randall Grichuk is your worst player of this series against the Rays. So as far as the first game was concerned, and it was confirmed that Luis Heel takes the roster spot of Cade Winquest, who unfortunately for him never made it in. He warmed up about 4 or 5 times. He was designated for assignment and presumably will go back to the Cardinals organization. Nothing has been, we'll find out whether he kind of made it through waivers. I think he probably will. But Heel takes his spot, and the Yankees now need a 5th man in the rotation, and that's exactly what Luis Heel is right now, at least. Especially coming off of Ryan Weathers having an 8-inning, 1-run performance, Luis Heel takes the loss in game 1. And as far as game 1 was concerned, Ben Rice did take a seat, but he would hit a pinch hit home run. Paul Goldschmidt gets the start. It was Trent Grisham sitting for the 2nd game in a row. Ryan McMahon was out of the lineup against the lefty Steven Matz, and Steven Matz, he got his 3rd win of the season. 5 innings for him, 2 hits, 2 runs, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts. And, really not a whole lot of offense for the Yankees in this game. Only getting 5 hits, a couple of extra base hits. Really, one of them was very fortunate. The Yankees get on the board for a couple of runs in the first. And Aaron Judge singles with 1 out and steals 2nd and goes to 3rd on a missed catch error by Taylor Walls. Cody Bellinger gets a sac fly. Giancarlo Stanton walks, and Ahmed Rosario gets an RBI triple. Really, it was a misplay by Chandler Simpson. It should have probably been ruled a single. Goes in front of him, and with the turf, it bounces and goes all the way to the wall for Stanton to score easily from first. And Rosario's RBI triple gives the Yankees a 2-0 lead, but it's the theme of the series that happens right away. And it's with 2 outs where it begins. A Rondo walk, Yandy Diaz opposite field 2-run homer. Luis Heel could simply not get out of the inning. He had a chance. He had 2 strikes on a Ronda, and he worked an 8-pitch walk. And then Yandy Diaz takes some yard for the next batter. Bottom of the 2nd, you get runners in the corners with 1 out. Chandler Simpson makes contact. It's an RBI grounder to make it 3-2. And that was your score for a while. As far as ABS goes in this game, Yankees were 0 for 2, and it's the, kind of the same usual suspects, where it was Caballero and Chisholm who were, hoping for a ball called, and they were unsuccessful. And in the case of Chisholm, that takes place in the 4th inning. For Caballero, I believe, may have been later in the game. But either way, Rays have a 3-2 lead, and Luis Heel was able to at least, kind of keep it there. Jake Bird comes on in the 5th, pitches a scoreless 5th inning with a couple of strikeouts. Bottom of the 6th, Brent Hedrick comes on and gives up a leadoff double to Ben Williamson. There's a sac bunt by Taylor Walls with an error by Brent Hedrick. So no outs, right? So it's one thing for them to get runners over. In many cases, the Yankees just were simply unable to get an out at all. So now Um, Hedrick is able to get Nick Fortes to strike out looking, but then it's Chandler Simpson, lefty lefty. And with Hedrick, he is not a Tim Hill type of lefty. I mean, in the way that he's a hard thrower, but it seems like he's a lot more successful against righties. I think the results kind of bear that out this year. And Chandler Simpson gets an RBI single to make it 4-2. Camilo Doval comes on and relieving Hedrick, and so Doval kind of taking on a little bit of a different role. It feels like you know Bednar is your closer. Beyond that, though, Cruz could pitch it's. I don't necessarily know that Doval is, your definite eighth inning guy. If the situation arises next time, it could be him, but it may not be him. And so Doval comes in earlier in the game, allows a single to drop in front of Aaron Judge. Junior Caminero gets the hit. Feel like, I don't know, Judge may have misplayed this one a little bit and kind of just lays back on it. And then you get a Jonathan Aranda RBI ground out, where Chisholm, with the bases loaded, one out, just softly hit. I think he maybe should have tried to go to second. Aranda doesn't have that much speed. Probably would have been safe regardless. And the Rays take a 5-2 lead. Ryan Yarborough comes on and pitches a couple of scoreless innings in the seventh and eighth against his former team. And then Ben Rice pinch hits for Goldschmidt in the eighth and homers. So Ben Rice, it's impressive, sitting on the bench all game, still doing damage. Hits his fourth homer of the season, makes it 5-3. Now let's go to the ninth. Brian Baker comes on, the former Oriole. Leadoff single Stanton, Rosario single in a righty versus righty matchup. So 2 on, no out. And Jazz Chisholm Jr. Is able to beat out the double play. They get the force out at second. Chisholm Jr. safe. So that kind of, puts the rally, at a stop, so to speak. Chisholm Jr. does steal second, though. So now it's second and third, one out, with Randall Grichuk up, which was surprising that he would bat for himself. It's decided that Trent Grisham would pinch it for Caballero. And look, as much as I'm not a fan of Grisham, it makes sense that he pinch it for one of them. JC Escara, to me, that's not a real option. I mean, he has no hits so far this year. He was on the bench as well. And Ryan McMahon, who, has obviously been terrible for the most part this season. So your options are pretty shitty. All that to say, Randall Grichuk really should not be up in that situation. He's shown nothing, and it's against a righty, and he strikes out with after Chisholm steals. So it's second and third, 2 out now. Grisham pinch hits for Caballero, and as we saw the game later, probably would have been better if you had to go with Grisham. Probably would have been better for him to go for Grichuk instead of Caballero. Grisham does pop out as a pinch hitter to end the game. Rays win 5-3. So it's the one run loss to the Yankees, and might as well have been. I mean, basically, it had the feel of a 1-run loss. So we go to game 2, and this one on paper was definitely the most lopsided in terms of the Yankees for pitching matchup, where it's Max Fried against Nick Martinez. And Martinez has gotten off to a pretty solid start. It was okay. I mean, he limited the damage, gave up a lot of base runners, but the Yankees were not able to take advantage of the opportunities. They were 2 for 12 of runners in scoring position in game 2. It was only Caballero hits late that they had runners in scoring position. Other than that, nothing. Max Fried goes 8 innings. So impressive for him to go that deep. He's had a very good start to the season, ERA below 2. 6 hits, 3 runs, no walks, 6 strikeouts. Nick Martinez goes 4 2/3 innings, 5 hits, 1 run, 3 walks, 4 strikeouts. Again, that's a lot of base runners against him, and they're unable to do anything about it. As far as ABS in this game, nothing bad to speak of, really. And just to jump ahead to game 3, it was Ben Rice who, yet again, it was almost in frustration where it was a full count pitch, where it was clearly a strike. You could tell he didn't really want to do it, but so game 1 was the bad thing. But the problem with the Yankees is you're not even really seeing that many successful challenges. It's just at best you're kind of just hoping for nothing. But the Rays had to go deep into their bullpen in this game. This was one where it's sort of back to your normal lineup, if you will, where Rosario's back to the bench. And McMahon, with Fried on the mound, it makes sense that McMahon would play third base. A lot of action goes to him. And the Yankees, they take the lead again, as they did in the first game. This time in the second inning, Austin Wells homers. So Austin Wells with his first RBI of the season. He gives the Yankees 1-0 lead, but then in the second inning, Fried gives it right back up. And I should mention in the first, there was a second and third eventually with Bellinger stealing while Ben Rice was up. Ben Rice strikes out looking, and then Stanton lines out to end that threat in the first, with two in scoring position. Wells homers in the top of the second, and then Caminero doubles in the second, ground out to get him over, RBI single Johnny DeLuca. Very simple and easy by the Tampa Bay Rays, and they just did it all series long. When they got runners on, they were moving them over and getting them in. Then there was no scoring until the sixth. In the fifth, the Yankees actually did get a bases loaded situation, and Nick Martinez is taken out. Kevin Kelly comes in, and he strikes out Giancarlo Stanton. So Stanton, it's a big spot. It's a little bit of bad luck in some cases. In that case, a strikeout. In the bottom of the sixth is where Fried gets into a little bit of trouble. Taylor Walls, leadoff single. Yandy Diaz robbed by Cody Bellinger of an extra base hit. And then with runners on the corners and one out, it would be a Jonathan Aranda sac fly to make it 2-1 Tampa. And then, let's see, we go to the eighth, and it's Brian Baker yet again getting into some trouble. A one-out walk for Giancarlo Stanton. Randall Grichuk pinch runs for him, and then Jazz Chisholm Jr. Doubles down the right field line to make it second and third, one out. Austin Wells is unable to get the runner in from third in less than 2 out as he flies out to shallow left. But Jose Caballero, the former Ray, traded from the Rays to the Yankees at the deadline last year, is able to get a 2-run double. He needed that badly. He had been really struggling going into that. Makes it 3-2 Yanks. Rosario, who had come in as a pinch hitter, and he struggled again in this game. He flies out there, so they could have maybe scored one more run. They don't. The Yankees take the lead. But then Fried, against Nick Fortes, gives up a leadoff double. And then Chandler Simpson pinch runs for him. And then you get a Taylor Wall sac bunt, and then a Yandy Diaz chop infield single. And you maybe could have walked Diaz or pitched around him. It's not like he hit the ball hard, and quite honestly, the way things were going, they probably were going to find a way to get Chandler Simpson in somehow, some way. But it ties it up right there at three. Fried gets through 8 innings. In the ninth, Hunter Biggie comes on. There's a one-out walk to Judge. He's still second. Judge's third steal of the year. Then, eventually, Ben Rice is intentionally walked with a runner on third and 2 out. Smart by Kevin Cash. And Randall Grichuk is up. And Boone admitted after the game that he could have and should have pinch hit Goldschmidt for Grichuk. He doesn't, and Grichuk flies out to center. That just can't happen. Again, Randall Grichuk cannot be up in these spots. If you want to have him against lefties, I can live with that. But against righties, it just can't be him. It just can't be. Fernando Cruz and Tim Hill combined for a scoreless 9th inning. We go to the 10th. Cole Sulser is on for the Rays. Jazz Chisholm Jr. pops out, so unsuccessful out there for Jazz. Can't get the runner over. Wells grounds out, gets Grichuk over to third with 2 out, and then Caballero again comes through with an RBI single. 3 RBIs for Caballero, clutch hits. The Yankees, at a bare minimum, score in that top half of the 10th to make it 4-3. And then Ahmed Rosario needed to take a pitch. Caballero was going to steal and had the base stolen. Rosario grounds out to the pitcher. That's not smart. That's not fundamentally sound. Rosario needed to just be patient on that one pitch. So it ends at 4-3, and David Bednar comes on. Bednar has struggled this season, but I'm not going to really place much blame here. It was all just bunts and just small ball on the part of Tampa. Chandler Simpson with a successful bunt single where Ahmed Rosario double clutches, and with Simpson on with the runner, he's got no chance. If McMahon's in there, maybe he does get him out. Rosario does not. Simpson's still second and third with no out, and Taylor Walls gets the bunt single to Bednar, and they got no play at home, nothing. So it makes it 4-4. Yandy Diaz is intentionally walked to load the bases. At that point, Hunter Fiducia strikes out, so there's still an opportunity to get out of this. Bases loaded, 1 out. Jonathan Aranda, and at this point, there had been Cody Bellinger had been brought into the infield. So 5 infielders for the Yanks with Grisham and Judge in the outfield. And Jonathan Aranda hits a chopper that goes in the direction of Jazz Chisholm Jr., where if he fields it cleanly, it's possible he could have tagged out Yandy Diaz, who was the base runner going from first to second, and thrown a rounder out at first. But Chisholm stumbles, falls, can't come up with it, throws to first, which it was over at that point. And it was kind of embarrassing where Jazz after the game was kind of just talking a little too freely. He was like unsure, like, oh, if he got the out at first, they went at the second with the run count. Like he should know that. Just Jazz has just not done himself any favors as far as on the field or off the field so far this season. And just the Rays making contact gets it done. And it's a major advantage to be the home team in extra innings. So the Rays win the series. They win it in extras 5-4, and we go to game 3. The one starter where the Yankees hadn't lost so far this year was Cam Schlittler. Now, Schlittler did have his a little bit of struggles against the A's last time around, and kind of did in this game as well. Schlittler picks up his first loss of the season, going 2-1 now. He went 5 innings, 7 hits, 3 runs, 1 walk, and 8 strikeouts. I should also say, and it goes without saying, that the key moment of the game in game 2 was, of course, that Jonathan Aranda walk-off, what was it, a fielder's choice, I think it goes down as, for Aranda. Let's see, believe it was. I think it goes down. It couldn't have been a single, although you never know with some of these official scores. But yes, reaches on a fielder's choice. That's, of course, your key moment of the game there. In game 1, I'm gonna give it to that end of the game Randall Grichuk strikeout. And if you want to combine it, the Trent Grisham pop out as well. Chance to maybe make something happen in the 9th inning. They don't get it done. So now here in game 3, again, Cam Schlittler struggles it was, first inning, having an opportunity to get something done. Sorry, not the Yankees having an opportunity, the Rays and Drew Rasmussen. He is nails against the Yankees. He wins, 6 innings, 1 hit, no runs, no walks, 7 strikeouts. They are lucky that he got out of this game as early as he did. He only threw 76 pitches, but I think with him not having pitched in a week and a half, Kevin Cash was very conservative there with a thin bullpen too. So, the Ray bullpen struggled in this game because it was their lesser guys, but the Yankees were unable to get enough offense done early. And then the bullpen was unable to hold it where it was, and that's kind of what leads you to this, and it's just been a theme. Giancarlo Stanton was out of the lineup. It was a planned off day, so Judge goes to DH, Grichuk goes to right field. Ascaro was in starting a catcher with a day game after a night game. Ben Rice batted second. Judge batted third. But in the first inning, it would be an RBI grandout for Yandy Diaz after some early trouble where Chandler Simpson was just great in this game. He went 3 for 4, a couple of runs, an RBI, a stolen base. Taylor Walls was great too. Those are really the 2 major players, in this game, and really, quite frankly, it felt like in this series. So RBI granted for Yandy Diaz, a leadoff triple for Cedric Mullins in the second leads to an RBI granted for Richie Palacios, and then eventually an RBI single for Chandler Simpson after Taylor Walls singled and stole. So it makes it 3-0. Schlittler does settle down from there. Unfortunately, he does pick up his first walk of the season. And what sucked about it was that there was a pitch timer violation. So if we want to maybe go ahead to next time, still no walks by Cam Schlittler this year where there was no pitch time violations, but of course it does still count. So that streak comes to an end. Still 3-0 Rays for a while. Rasmussen just absolutely dealing. Ryan Yarbrough comes on, pitches a scoreless 6th inning. In the 7th, Ben Rice. Originally, Cole Sulser is on for the Rays. Ben Rice, it was originally a home run, but it was overturned to a ground rule double, correctly called. Judge walks, and Cody Bellinger gets an RBI single to make it 3-1. Jazz Chisholm Jr. grounds out softly to the pitcher. The runners move over to second and third. Giancarlo Stanton this time, he pinch hits for Randall Grichuk against Kevin Kelly. Again, the matchup from the game before. Stanton gets an RBI ground out to make it 3-2. Wells pinch hits for Ascara and lines out. Hit it well, so it's still 3-2. Ahmed Rosario comes in to play right field for Stanton. Wells remains in the game. Leadoff triple for Chandler Simpson, lefty-lefty versus Yarbrough. They bring on Camilo Doval, and Junior Caminero gets a sac fly to make it 4-2. And then Let's go to the bottom of the eighth. Brett Hedrick, leadoff single to the lefty, Jake Fraley, sack bunt, Cedric Mullins. You get a single for Ben Williamson, and then a sat bunt scores the run for Taylor Walls to make it 5-2. So Hedrick, certainly was a bit flustered in games 1 and 3 with some of the bunt action and just, he had gotten off to a good start. He's been used a lot, but he gives up runs in games 1 and 3, makes it 5-2. In the ninth inning, Mason Englert comes on to get the save for the Rays, but it was dicey. Rice with a leadoff single, Aaron Judge hits a 2-run homer to cut it to 5-4. Bellinger strikeout, Chisholm Jr. ground out. Rosario keeps it alive with a double, and then Austin Wells intentionally walked, and it was a smart move by Kevin Cash because Ryan McMahon came up, and Ryan McMahon grounds out to end it. Rays get the sweep. They're now 8-7, as are the Yankees. You look at the division, Orioles are 8-7. The Red Sox are 6-9, and the Blue Jays are 6-9. So a three-way tie at first between the Yanks, Rays, and Orioles, and then a tie for fourth with the Blue Jays and Red Sox. And now the Yankees will go home. It's a 7-game homestand. Get 4 against the Angels, 3 against the Royals. You got a healthy Mike Trout to deal with, and even I can't remember if Trout. I don't even think he was healthy last year. The Yankees struggled. They were not doing well. It was around the time of the Blue Jays road series, but at home, I remember they lost 3 of 4. They almost got 4 games swept. They ended up salvaging the final game of the series, but you got a 4-game set here where the Yankees need to turn things around. The first pitching matchup on paper is a decent one for the Yankees. It's Yusei Kikuchi, who the Yankees have seen a lot over the years. He's struggled to start the season against Will Warren, who's been okay. Warren. Game 2 will be Reed Detmers, another lefty, against lefty Ryan Weathers. We'll see if he can continue what was a really good outing against the A's last time. So you're going to see a pretty heavy right-handed line at the first 2 games. So you should see Paul Goldschmidt, but we'll see how they figure it out, right? Because you don't want to take Ben Rice's bat out of the lineup either. And then for games 3 and 4, the Angels don't have a starter listed, but for the Yankees, it'll be Luis Gil, and he'll look to bounce back after a rough go at it in Tampa. And then Max Fried will get the last start of the series in a Thursday matinee game at Yankee Stadium. So times are rough for the Yankees right now. They have been losing close games all over the place. Like I said, 0-6 in 1-run games. They started out 7-1, now 8-7. This could get ugly if they don't turn this around quickly. And that lineup is just looking really, really bad. There's a lot of dead weight in it, and they're going to hope for some sort of spark coming back to the Bronx. But I don't know, the crowd may not be on their side if things don't go right at the beginning of the series. So the Yankees go down to the Trop, which has been a house of horrors. It's too bad that the Rays aren't playing at George M. Steinbrenner Field again. They're back at Tropicana Field. The Yankees get swept against the Rays and have lost 5 in a row, and they will look to snap the skid as they come back home to take on the Angels for a 4-game set.